How can one animated TV show predict so many things? Follow me down the rabbit hole about The Simpsons. Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about The Simpsons. Thank you, Rebecca, Randy, Dustin, Angie, Mark, Brian, AJ, and Zach for requesting this episode. I did not realize I had so many requests for this, and I went down a rabbit hole. It got a little weird. It always does, but it's going to be really cool. So before we get into it, of course, I want to plug a couple things. If you want to go to Patreon, get your episodes a week early and ad-free, you can do that in the show notes. If you want to watch this episode, you can do that on YouTube and on Rumble. And if you want merchandise, that is also in the show notes. So go click on that. I'm working on new merch. I hear you guys, you want more things than just t-shirts. And I hear that. I'm working on it, I promise. So hang tight with me. And if you haven't heard yet, I have decided that I'm no longer going to do Cult Chronicles. I'm just focusing on The Rabbit Hole. Thank you guys for all of your support with Cult Chronicles. I just need to focus on my family a little bit more, but I appreciate you all. And with that, let's dive in. The Simpsons is an animated sitcom created by Matt Groening. Matt Groening was born February 15, 1954 in Portland, Oregon. He attended Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in journalism in 1977. After graduating, he moved to LA to become a writer. He went through a series of jobs while living in LA. He called them like a series of lousy jobs or whatever. But finally, in 1978, he sold his first professional cartoon to Wet Magazine. He found employment at the Los Angeles Reader, and eventually, after showing the editor his cartoons, he was given a spot for them in the paper. His comic, Life in Hell, in which he wrote for his friends to describe his life in Los Angeles, was loosely based on a chapter from Walter Kaufman's book, Critique of Religion and Philosophy. This was the cartoon that put Matt on the map and that he put in the Reader. This comic became popular almost immediately. They even made a book out of it, and it was basically like an underground success because nobody wanted to publish it right away. And then after that, they published Work is Hell. And these books were published by Matt's girlfriend at the time, Deborah Kaplan. Not too long later, Matt and Deborah left Los Angeles Reader and started Life in Hell Co. Life in Hell was carried in 250 weekly newspapers and has been created into a series of books, including School is Hell, Childhood is Hell, The Big Book of Hell, and The Huge Book of Hell. However, this is how Matt got the attention of James L. Brooks. Brooks was a Hollywood writer, director, producer, and founder of Gracie Films. He was shown the comic strip by fellow producer Polly Platt. Brooks then contacted Matt in 1985, asking him to work in animation on an unidentified future project. Matt didn't know what it was, but he was like, that sounds cool. That's kind of what he wanted to do anyway. This was actually developing a series of short animated skits called Bumpers for the Fox variety show, The Tracey Ullman Show. Brooks originally wanted Matt to adapt Life in Hell for The Tracey Ullman Show. And I didn't really know what the Tracey Ullman Show was, so I looked it up just in case a couple of you guys didn't know either. So it's this television sketch comedy variety show that was featured on Fox only for a couple of years. It really wasn't that popular. The Simpsons came from it, and that was way more popular. But Matt didn't really want to develop Life in Hell for the Tracey Ullman Show because he thought that he would have to give up his ownership rights, and he wasn't super into that. So while he was in the lobby of Brooks's office, he hurriedly sketched out his version of a dysfunctional family, and this idea was The Simpsons. So Homer, the overweight father, Marge, the slim mother, Bart, the miscreant oldest child, Lisa, the intelligent middle child, and Maggie, who was the baby, or is the baby. He named all of the characters in the show, or the first 5 characters, after his family. So Homer and Margaret are his parents' names. Although in the show, Marge is actually short for Marjorie, and his mom's name is Margaret. Lisa and Maggie are actually his sisters' names. And he thought it would be a little too, on the nose to name the boy after himself, so he named him Bart, which was an anagram for brat. But later on, he came out saying, his older brother was kind of the inspiration for Bart. The Simpsons then appeared on The Tracey Ullman Show. They first appeared on April 19th, 1987. And the family was drawn pretty crudely because Matt thought that the animators would clean up the drawing he had given them. And he had just sketched it really quickly in the lobby. They did not clean it up. They just put it on the show just like how it was. But like I said earlier, the Tracey Ullman Show wasn't that popular, but the Simpsons shorts that had been featured on the show were very popular. People really liked those. So in 1989, they adapted The Simpsons into a half-hour spin-off series for the Fox Broadcasting Company. The series premiered on December 17th, 1989. This show was and still is a worldwide phenomenon, which actually really surprised everyone, including Matt. They didn't think it would be that popular. As of April 13th, 2025, 785 episodes have aired of the show. This show is the longest running American animated series, American sitcom, and American scripted primetime television series, both in seasons and in individual episodes. In July 2007, The Simpsons movie came out, and it was a huge success. So much so that as of 2024, they are working on a sequel for The Simpsons movie. But that's not why you're here. You're here for the conspiracies. Is this show predicting the future? And I might have the answer for you. The show has predicted so many things that the world has taken notice and has started to question if Matt Groening is a time traveler. When asked why so many things have been predicted correctly, they basically chalked it up to just luck. Matt said that they have done so many different jokes over the time that at some point something was bound to be right. He continued that they write jokes based on the most absurd possibility, but it turns out that's just the way the world is these days. That it's not really that intentional. Turns out, though, that Matt Groening is a Freemason. So this leads to him being able to write very accurate predictions because of the secret knowledge that he has from the organization. And we're going to get more into that when we talk about the yellow cube theory, because I'm thinking that the Freemasons have more knowledge than we give them credit for. But he also references the Freemasons in the show. They call them the stonecutters, and we're going to get into that a little bit more too. I don't have all my notes right in front of me, but it's just very interesting. It also doesn't help that Hollywood is super corrupt, and anything that is popular would have a creator that is corrupt, because now he has that power in the Hollywood world to make something that people are watching. It seems like the powerful people get their claws into anyone and everyone that has any sort of power in Hollywood, and having a show this popular means that you have some power in the world. But before we get into the yellow cube theory, I want to get into the predictions, because a lot of people are like, there's no way they predicted that many things correctly. I'm here to tell you that I did not cover every single prediction that they have done in their show, and there's still a lot that I did cover. So if I missed one that you're like, wait, you didn't cover this one. I know, I didn't cover all of them, but I covered a lot. But it's one thing if they correctly predicted 1 to 2 things. You're like, okay, that's a coincidence, right? You predicted this thing correctly, and that's odd, but that could have been a coincidence. Maybe that was just an absurd joke that happened to come true. Guys, when I tell you the amount of things that they have predicted that have come true, it's outrageous. Like 9/11. So in the episode The City of New York versus Homer Simpson in 1997, so 4 years before 9/11, the family bought a New York City guidebook while they were visiting New York City. On the cover of the book, it had the title New York across the top, and then the amount of the book was $9. And that was really big right in the center of this book. And then there are the 2 towers in the background. Like I said, the $9 was printed really big. So it really looks like it says 9/11 because the towers are right behind the 9. Were they telling us that something was going to happen on 9/11? But we wouldn't have known that it was going to be 2001. But the fact that it says 9/11 and the towers are there, a lot of people point to that and they're like, whoa, that's weird. Okay, maybe that's not a smoking gun, but I have more. A lot happened in the 2000 episode Bart to the Future. So Bart is shown the future where Lisa is president. In this episode, Lisa is wearing a purple pantsuit and a pearl necklace, and her hair is kind of like slicked back. Well, when Kamala Harris was sworn in as vice president, she was wearing this like purple skirt suit with this long purple trench coat, and she had this necklace that had pearls in it, and her hair was just like down and simple. In the same episode, they even mention how Donald Trump was the president before Lisa Simpson. He left economics kind of in shambles. Like Lisa asks, how much money do we have? And they're like, we don't have any money. We have zero money. We are completely broke. Well, due to COVID-19, following Trump's first presidency, Biden and Harris had to deal with severe economic issues. So were they predicting that? Especially because everyone went into lockdown, so it wasn't like people were out making money. But also in this episode, they predicted holograms. Now, this isn't really happening super widely yet, but multiple companies are working on holograms. And they did put on a holographic show of Tupac not long ago, which got people like really riled up. They're like, it's really Tupac. I'll do an episode on it, I'm sure. In 2015, in The Simpsons short film Trumptastic Voyage, it shows Homer floating through Trump's hair, and in the background is a Trump 2012 sign that then changes to 2016 and then 2020, 2024, and 2028, kind of like insinuating that he's going to run for president in all these years. After Homer snaps out of his delusion of floating through Trump's hair, Trump is seen speaking at a podium saying, quote, "I'm officially running for president of the United States." Just the next year, he was voted into office for the first time. In the 2015 episode, The Margian Chronicles, Marge and Lisa almost go to Mars. This is all part of an attempt by a private company to colonize Mars. Does that sound familiar to anybody? In fact, the entire Simpson family signed up to go to Mars, but after put through the training, only Marge and Lisa made it through the process, and they had signed up to leave like 10 years in the future. But they had to move up the launch date for whatever reason. So now they're aboard the spacecraft and then the rocket just doesn't launch and they don't end up going to space. Well, on September 7th, 2024, SpaceX announced that they would be launching the first uncrewed mission to Mars. In the episode, like I said, they were signing people up to leave 10 years later. Well, SpaceX said that they would launch this first uncrewed mission to Mars in 2 years. So it was a 2-year announcement. But close enough. The Simpsons did predict Apple Vision as well. So this prediction came in the 2016 episode Friends and Family. Mr. Burns got a VR headset and took Homer's family as his own virtual family. By the end of the episode, it seems like the whole town is walking around wearing this headset. And like they're living in a reality that is better than their current reality because it's all virtual. And they've made this perfect reality virtually. And there was some really serious conversations happening, especially when all these virtual reality headsets first started coming out. And there's actually this really famous picture of a man in London wearing a suit, and he's got his Apple Vision goggles on, walking a robot dog. So people are like, is this our future where everyone's just going to be wearing these virtual reality headsets everywhere? Like, almost like in WALL-E, how they float around in these chairs, like they adapted to that. Is this our new future? People are really concerned about that. But with that, they also predicted smartwatches. In the 1995 episode, Lisa's Wedding, the characters are seen using watch-like devices to communicate. In the Simpsons movie, an animated Tom Hanks says, "Hello, I'm Tom Hanks. The US government has lost its credibility, so it's borrowing some of mine." And he goes on to like do this whole commercial. It's like an animated Tom Hanks, and it's voiced by Tom Hanks, which actually parallels the video put out by the Biden's inaugural committee to celebrate Biden being in office for 1 year. And Tom Hanks is actually the narrator of this video. So you're like, wait a second. Has the government lost its credibility and now it's borrowing some of Tom Hanks? Which is not the credibility anybody wants to be borrowing. Dude is so shady. In 1992, they predicted the baby translator, which I wish I had when my kids were like still little babies. Homer's half-brother asked Homer for $2,000 to create this invention, and this invention would translate what babies are saying. Since then, there have been a number of companies that have tried to help translate the cries of babies. So they're not actually translating what babies are saying, but their cries are different. If you are a parent, you know that each cry is a little bit different. So the Swiss company came out with Sound Dream and won an innovation award for it in 2021. They have said that the technology would be implemented into Philips Avent baby monitors, so that way the baby monitors can tell you, hey, the baby's crying because it's wet or because it's hungry or because it's tired. But there are also apps on the Apple App Store that claim to translate what the baby is crying over. I don't know if it does a good job, but apparently there are apps for that. There's an app for everything. Which actually leads us perfectly into the next prediction. So the AI takeover has been predicted by The Simpsons as well. In 2012, they released Them Robot, where Mr. Burns rolls out robots that take over the power plant factory jobs, and they replace everyone in the factory except for Homer, who works on these robots. This leaves the town, who is mostly employed at the nuclear power plant, 99% unemployed. Because the robots take away Homer's beer, he actually gets mad at them and he starts to make their heads explode. And this makes the rest of the robots homicidal and they want to kill Homer. This turns into a full-out robot versus people of Springfield battle with the robots losing and everybody's happy. Yay, they get their jobs back. But this is actually happening. And people don't think that AI or robots will take over their jobs, but people are losing their jobs every single day to AI and to robots. Like, it's happening actually in real life right now. People are like, no, it's never going to happen. It's already happening. In 2003, they depicted forced vaccines for the kids. So Bart actually dodged the vaccine to begin with because he's afraid of needles. But of course, he is the troublemaker of the group, which I kind of find funny. They're like, oh, only the troublemaker wants to dodge this vaccine. But the doc actually cancels the rest of his appointments to try to hunt down Bart to give him this vaccine. But when the doc tells his secretary to cancel all of his appointments for the rest of the day, there's a kid in the waiting room that starts to complain saying, but I need a kidney, which is kind of funny because it's like giving Bart the vaccine is more important than this kidney transplant for this child. And then the doctor goes on to show up in all these places and then eventually trick Bart into giving him this shot. Bart almost immediately loses his hearing and tells Marge, I can't hear anything. Then the doc gives Homer this card about the shot, which states death prick as the name of the shot. And he says that hearing loss is a side effect to this vaccine, but it's fine. It should probably clear up in a day or two. And if it doesn't, call him. He'll be in the Bahamas. And then he tricks Homer into signing a malpractice waiver. That's interesting. Because in 2021, when the COVID vaccine was rolled out, it seemed as though they were trying to push this and force everybody into getting this shot. And of course, now we see that all these side effects are coming out and all these weird things are happening. And everyone's like, oh, it wasn't the shot. Okay. Actually, now I think people are coming out and they're like, oh yeah, sorry about that. It was the shot. I feel like all the truth is coming out about COVID now. But speaking of COVID, they predicted that too. In one of their episodes, they actually rolled out this Pandora virus, kind of Pandora's box. And the virus required a worldwide quarantine, and they required the ships to all remain out in sea. Well, it was actually just Bart messing around because he wanted to stay on the cruise ship. So he played this part of a pandemic movie and then cut off all communications to the outside world. And everyone's like, oh, the world's in a worldwide quarantine because of this pandemic, and now we're shut off from the outside world. But that's not the only time that they predicted the pandemic. They've actually predicted it a couple of times. So in 1993, a virus called Osaka flu spreads through Springfield. The virus comes from juicers ordered from Japan. And in the episode, it shows these sick workers in Japan packing the juicers into the boxes. and like coughing all over him. And then the residents of Springfield unboxing these juicers and then getting the virus. Or in 2010, in the episode The Full Monty, when America's media empires all get together to decide on the next like phony crisis, their words, not mine. And they decide to roll out a new public health scare, specifically a new disease. And they go back and forth like, oh, it should be like this. It should be like this. No one should be immune to it. Like basically trying to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. Then they decide that they do have this disease that hasn't been tested. So they're like, oh, go ahead and come over here, NBC. And they shoot NBC with this shot of this mysterious disease, and he faints to the ground. But this disease has to come from something. So they've decided that it has to come from something in their homes, that they have to be scared of something in their homes. So they end up calling it the house cat flu. They do get a vaccine for this house cat flu, but it's only available in limited supply, and only one kid per family gets it. So, kind of like the vaccine when it first rolled out, and they didn't have enough vaccines for everybody. And they were like, well, kids this age to this age should get it. Anybody under 5 doesn't need the vaccine because they can't even get COVID. And then later they're like, oh, well, they can get COVID now, so now everybody needs a vaccine or whatever. It was crazy. Another one that's kind of fun that they predicted was the January 6th riots. In the Treehouse of Horror 31 episode, Homer sleeps through Election Day and doesn't actually get to cast his vote. They have a couple Election Day ones, but this is one of them. So when he wakes up, there's like complete chaos in the streets. He is later seen on Inauguration Day on his roof. The date in the scene actually says January 20th, 2021. And the whole town has just like burned down. It looks like basically like the apocalypse. Ironically enough, this episode aired in October of 2020 before they knew who won the 2020 election or that the riots would happen at the Capitol. In the 1997 episode Lisa's Sacks, Marge is seen holding a book titled Curious George and the Ebola Virus. In 2014 and 2015, there were record-breaking outbreaks of Ebola, causing 11,000 deaths around the world. In When You Dish Upon a Star, which aired in 1998, there was a sign that read 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Co. In 2017, Disney announced its acquisition of 21st Century Fox. In 2012, they depicted Lady Gaga performing in a concert that involved her being suspended in the air and like singing. And then in 2017, Lady Gaga actually made her grand entrance during the Super Bowl halftime show by descending from the stadium roof while singing. In 2008, Homer was voting in the election between Barack Obama and John McCain. In this episode, he kept trying to click on Barack Obama, but every time he did, it would switch to John McCain. Well, then in 2012 in Pennsylvania, the voting machines had to be removed actually because they kept doing that exact thing. It wasn't John McCain anymore because that was the 2008 election, but it was between Obama and Mitt Romney. And every time you clicked on Obama, the votes would flip to Mitt Romney. In the episode The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer accurately predicts the mass of the Higgs boson, 14 years before CERN discovered it. And we could go on and on and on. There are so many predictions I didn't include. I included a lot, but I didn't have time to include every single one. But it makes you wonder, like, how many times can they get it right before it's kind of weird? Like, it's pretty weird by this point. But then they've also covered some conspiracies. So if their predictions are this spot on, then maybe they're telling us the truth about these other conspiracies. Like the episode where they hit the firmament with the baseball and break it open. And then like the ocean literally falls down and fills up the baseball stadium. Like the ocean's above the dome. Or when they expose drinking children's blood and child trafficking. Yep. Mr. Burns actually needed a blood transfusion, and the only person in the entire town that had the same blood type as him was Bart Simpson. So after getting the blood from Bart, he has like this pep in his step, and he seems like younger, and he's more agile, and he can do all these things. And he said that he has tried everything to try to keep himself young and healthy. He's done all of it, like tinctures and different medications, and all he needed was the blood from a young boy. That sounds a lot like adrenochrome. They also depicted secret societies when Homer joined one in Homer the Great. So we talked about this kind of at the beginning, where Matt Groening is a Freemason. He depicts the stonecutters in the show, which would be kind of like the Freemasons, because a Mason does stonework or rock work, different brickwork, different things like that. So anyway, Homer wants to join the stonecutters, but he can't seem to get in. Grandpa is a stonecutter. He says he's a member of the stonecutters. Then Homer's like, cool, he's my ticket in. And then Grandpa starts going through his wallet and pulling out all of these cards out of his wallet. He's like, yeah, I'm an elk, I'm a Mason, I'm a communist, I'm the president of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance, and I'm a member of the Stonecutters. So Homer goes over to pull his Stonecutter card out of his wallet, and he's like, I'll take the communist card too. Then Homer, of course, because his father was a member, now he can join the Freemasons. That sounds a little familiar. So when he's walking through the lodge, you can see on the walls that there's like the Mason symbol of the square and the compass. And there's also like pictures of pyramids. There's like all these different like secret society pictures on the walls of this lodge. And then he takes an oath not to reveal any of the secrets of the society. And he uses his membership to do all kinds of weird things. So he has a leak and the plumber comes over and the plumber's like, oh, I can't fix it for like 3 months or whatever. And Homer's like, well, what if I shake your hand like this? And then they do this whole secret handshake and he's like, oh, cool, you're like a stonecutter too. And then he fixes the leak right then. Or another time when he's stuck in traffic and he's like, I'm going to avoid traffic. So I'm going to go under the city through these secret tunnels. And there's actually a theory that there are secret tunnels under LA that some very prominent people get to use to avoid traffic. And there's like stores and different things down there to include a Starbucks. But that theory is for a different day. They end up giving Homer this like packet that has all these different things for his Stonecutter membership. And in that packet's a sticker for his car so he doesn't have to get pulled over anymore. And they also give him a different number for emergencies. So instead of 911, it's 912. Which kind of makes you wonder like how many of these things are true. But anyway, how would Matt Groening be able to predict all these things, right? Like maybe, okay, he's a Freemason. He's going to show us images of the Freemasons or the Stonecutters, and okay, fine, we're just supposed to believe it's all fiction. And that's what they're trying to do is show us that it's just pretend. It's in this animated sitcom. It's not real. But also, you predicted a lot of things correctly. A lot of things. Well, that brings us to the yellow cube theory. So in 2006, a microbiologist named Dr. Dan Burish came out and claimed that he worked for a secret organization called the Majestic 12. This organization was formed in 1947 by President Harry S. Truman. The point of it was to facilitate the recovery and investigation of alien spacecraft. Kind of like what Bob Lazar was saying. According to Dr. Dan, U.S. intelligence agencies were in possession of several devices that were capable of bending space-time, allowing them to look backward or forward in time, which you could see so many things in the past. I would have so many questions about the past. Anyway, these devices were a part of a top-secret CIA program called Project Looking Glass. He explained that one of the devices was built using instructions found in ancient Sumerian and ancient Egyptian carvings, as well as technology recovered from the crashed UFO. Which makes you wonder, like, the crashed UFO from Roswell? Because they said that this craft came from Zeta Reticuli, the same star system Bob Lazar said his craft was from. The ancient Egyptians may have actually known more than we thought as like a general public, but I think that there's so many conspiracy theories about the Egyptians and the pyramids, but us conspiracy theorists have been saying this the whole time. There's more to this story. So in the Zeti temple, there are these odd carvings. These carvings cannot be explained by any Egyptologist. They're like, we don't really know what these ones are. Some people believe this temple is actually a portal to another world. The ancients believed the temple was built on the closest entry point between this world and the next world. Because of this, the temple has always been protected by a cosmic priesthood. They are known to possess knowledge of the cosmos and were here to aid in humanity's ascension. There is even a carving of a pharaoh dragging this like weird sled looking thing. And this sled actually looks an awful lot like the time machine built in the movie The Time Machine that came out in 2002, which is based on the book by H.G. Wells called The Time Machine. But according to Dr. Dan, one of these devices created by the military using this ancient Egyptian knowledge was this small magic box you could basically hold in your hands. They called it the Yellow Cube. This Yellow Cube was used by world leaders to see what fate had in store for them in the future. They could see into the future almost like the Tesseract in the Marvel universe, right? So we know that the Tesseract is also the space stone that allows the user to control the fabric of space and teleport to anywhere in the universe. But also, like in the Marvel universe, Doctor Strange, who can see into the future, he sees all these different possibilities, and depending on what you do, one of them comes true. So they knew, using this yellow cube, that the future wasn't set in stone, and that they were shown all these different probabilities of what would happen. There goes the movies telling us what's really happening again. But of course, that's just science fiction. The world leaders would try to use the information that they had from this yellow cube to manipulate our timeline and the future. They could see what future would be the best for them and what's like the best outcome for them and the world. And then they would try to manipulate our timeline to make that become a reality. But in seeing the futures, they also saw a future in which the whole world was destroyed. This destruction was actually caused by the Project Looking Glass technology, is what they saw, which led to the immediate shutdown of this project. That doesn't mean that everything was destroyed. That just means they stopped manipulating the timeline, probably. But why does this matter for The Simpsons? So we know that the things in the show are based off of Matt Groening's life. For example, the names of many of the characters. Apparently, the town of Springfield in the show is actually based on a little town in Oregon called Looking Glass. That's weird and oddly specific. But we also know that he is a high-ranking Freemason, which kind of makes you wonder, does he have access to this yellow cube where he can see different possibilities for the future? Maybe he's not like manipulating the timeline. Maybe he's just depicting these different futures in The Simpsons because he has access to this yellow cube through the Freemasons and different high-ranking members and all of this, all this political stuff that would happen in the Freemasons for him to get this cube. And he uses it to predict different futures, which kind of makes you wonder, like, did he have other futures that he's also predicted in the show that just didn't come true? So we're like, we don't even know that it was a potential future, but Matt knows. He's like, that was one of the futures that we predicted. Kind of fun to think about. But Matt is also the creator of the animated show Futurama. And in that show, they show Leela, who's like the Cyclops lady, looking in a yellow box before falling in and then coming out in a different timeline. So was that a nod to the yellow cube? Kind of odd. But of course, those are not the only theories. There are a couple other things about The Simpsons that I wanted to include because I try to include every single theory. Yes, maybe they have information about the future. But also, is there a Springfield Paradox? This is the idea that every place named Springfield is linked to the same place. That there is only one place in the universe actually named Springfield, and all the other places connect to it. That one or more parallel universes touches Springfield at some angle that we can't really see. And if someone was to exit Springfield at a particular angle, they might enter a parallel universe. That's kind of fun, but also terrifying. But there's the idea that The Simpsons are actually based on a real town suffering from a nuclear disaster as well. So this idea is that they made this disaster into an animated show to make it more friendly, but in reality there are people suffering out there, like real life people. The people are yellow because of the radiation poisoning, and the environmental impacts from the nuclear power plant are seen throughout the whole first season. But in this theory, the first season is actually the last season. So like it's the end of The Simpsons, or like the life of these people. That every season after season 1 is all what's happening leading up to the first season. This is because we see a wide array of diseases in the first season that we don't see in other seasons necessarily. It would actually make more sense for people to get sicker over time and not be super sick, and then all of a sudden everybody's fine. That's also why the first season is so poorly drawn. They didn't want to reveal how truly sick these people were. This theory also states that everything in all the other episodes outside of season 1 that is happening, it's happening over a year, like a 1-year time period, and in no particular order. Like it's not chronological, it's just random things happening, which is why the characters never really age. They're always just the same age. And there are some episodes that are an exception to that, but mostly they're all the same age. The Springfield nuclear disaster cover-up is said to have happened sometime in the early 1980s. They covered it up because it would have been a huge black mark on the already iffy nuclear program. They're like, well, it's like too big to fail. We can't let this nuclear program fail. So they decided instead to erase all history of Springfield, get rid of all the evidence, all the people, silence anyone that didn't play along with their story. And then they made this show about it because it would be too silly to ever be truly believable by anyone if they did ever really speak out about what happened there. This theory doesn't specify exactly where this Springfield is, because there's Springfields all over the place. And I think almost every state has a Springfield. If not a big city, at least a small city. I know Springfield, Illinois is a big city. I know Springfield, Missouri is a big city, but there's a couple other ones. I think Ohio. They never specify which state this Springfield is in, but that there was a nuclear disaster in a Springfield, and that's what caused basically The Simpsons to be created. They were almost like making fun of it. And it's all part of a big cover-up. Lastly, there are some small little theories about the characters in the show that I thought were kind of fun, that I would kind of end on a high note. I don't know if it's necessarily a high note, but like the fact that Mr. Burns is based off of Rupert Murdoch, the media mogul, or that Homer is actually Krusty the Clown. And that Homer is either gay or bisexual. That's a theory that's out there. There's a theory that Marge divorces Homer in the series finale, or that Grandpa is actually transgender. So Grandpa has done a lot of cross-dressing in the show. More than any other character, he does cross-dressing, or he has flashbacks to his past where he was like a woman. So like at one point he dreamed of being the queen of the Old West, or dressing up as a Cabernet singer, along with so many other times that he dressed as a woman. So, but is that a prediction to the transgender movement that is happening now? Or is that just the fact that Grandpa's always been transgender? We just didn't pick up on the fact. I don't really watch The Simpsons that much, but this was a fun episode to kind of dive in because I learned a lot about the yellow cube theory, which I didn't know much about, and time travel, which I do believe that time travel is real. There's just too many weird things that happen, like the Mandela effect. But anyway, until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.